I'm Cassie Pikarsky, Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Truman Library Institute and your host for 75 and 5. As part of the Truman Library Institute's commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the Truman administration, 75 and 5 highlights the important moments and significant developments that led to some of Harry Truman's biggest decisions. Today, we're going to explore the spring of 1947. But first, let's step back to September 1946, when White House counsel Clark Clifford and advisor George Elsey completed a comprehensive analysis of Soviet-American relations. Their conclusion? It was America's most perilous problem. The Soviets were maintaining excessively large military forces in satellite countries, opposing world peace agreements in order to legally remain in post-war countries, and rapidly growing their military power. The report concluded that the United States should support and assist all democratic countries which are in any way menaced or endangered by the USSR. After reading the report, Truman had the remaining copies locked away in hopes that he could mend the relationship peacefully. He certainly could not if the report was released. Fast forward 7 months to March 7th, 1947. Believing that a communist takeover was imminent, Truman's team was hard at work preparing a speech to Congress to ask for $400 million in aid for Greece and Turkey. The speech writing team drew significantly from that 1946 report, although they never went so far as to mention the Soviets by name. Meanwhile, Truman met with congressional leaders to get their support. Republican Senator Arthur Vandenberg advised the president that if he wanted public support, he had to scare the hell out of the American people. On March 12, 1947, the president stood before a joint session of Congress at 1 p.m. to deliver his speech about what came to be known as the Truman Doctrine. In it, he said, "I believe that it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures. I believe that our help should be primarily through economic and financial aid, which is essential to economic stability and orderly processes. Should we fail to aid Greece and Turkey in this fateful hour, the effect will be far-reaching to the West as well as to the East." In the president's 18-minute speech, which some mark as the beginning of the Cold War, Truman announced the most significant change in U.S. foreign policy in American history, ending a century and a half of isolationism. The position Truman outlined would dominate U.S. diplomacy for the next 40 years. After the speech, an exhausted Truman boarded a plane for Key West. While there, Margaret made her radio debut in Detroit as a guest on the Ford Motor Company's Sunday evening hour. More than 15 million people tuned in for her March 16th performance with the Detroit Symphony, making for a very high-pressure first performance. The reviews were generally good. Margaret would later say they were better than she deserved. In a note of encouragement, Truman wrote, "Now don't get scared, you can do it. And if anyone says you can't, I'll bust him in the snoot," which would not be the last threat he made to a reviewer of his daughter's singing. On March 21st, 1947, Truman signed Executive Order 9835, establishing the Federal Employees Loyalty and Security Program. Although the term disloyal was never defined, all federal employees were now subject to loyalty investigations and could be dismissed based on reasonable grounds alone. The accused often did not know who to accuse them or what the charges were. Although Truman privately wrote that the country was perfectly safe so far as communism is concerned, we have far too many sane people. He wanted to avoid any accusations of softness on communism at home after he had just called for a hard approach to communism abroad. Over the next 4 years, more than 3 million employees would be investigated and cleared. Several thousand would resign, and 212 would be dismissed. No one was indicted, and no evidence of espionage was ever found. After his presidency, Truman would privately admit that the executive order had been a terrible mistake. By the spring of 1947, Truman had fully taken charge of the presidency, as Charlie Ross had predicted after the midterm elections. His approval rating had risen significantly to 60%. Liberty magazine wrote that the recent change in Harry Truman has been variously ascribed to new advisors, a difference of political climate, or a change in his nature. The fact is that it is not change, but growth. Meanwhile, time commended his new sense of the dignity of his office, a new confidence, and a new formula: be natural. And then next time, see where the new Truman would take things next. If you enjoyed what you heard today, follow the Truman Library Institute on Facebook and visit our website to sign up for our email newsletter for updates on programs, events, symposiums, and more 75 and 5 episodes highlighting the legacy of our 33rd president. Details and links are in the comments below. Until next time, as Truman once said, do your best. History will do the rest.